To be creative, a person must exist and have a feeling of existing, not in conscious awareness, but as a basic place to operate from. Creativity is then the doing that arises out of being. It indicates that he who is alive. We associate creativity with chaos, and it's costing us. We are a deeply fearful culture. We fear change. We fear rest. We fear energy. We fear stasis. But there's this really interesting paradox within each of us, because we also yearn for it. In pursuing intelligence, we championed efficiency over creativity. In the process of honoring only what is practical and productive, we've sacrificed ourselves. We forfeit our childlike wonder, and we gave up searching for the sublime. So what does it take to cultivate the imagination? How do we pursue something so obscure, so ambiguous, so obtuse? We can start by looking for experiences that transport us in time and space. Longinus, who's credited with writing the profound essay on the Sublime, he describes the sublime as persuasions that bring power and irresistible might. Sarah Kaufman describes Heraclitus as a living being, unafraid to tap into the sublime. He thought becoming, change, fire was the essence of all things, and contemplated with what she calls happy amazement. So what makes us so happy when we search for the sublime? It is said that Thales of Miletus, the first natural philosopher, was so dazzled by the stars that he once fell into a well while walking. Did you know the reward center in our brain lights up every time we pursue answers to our curiosity? And every time we make a new discovery, we strengthen our memories. We then have more and more material for connections and direct access to the sublime. Iconic memory is where we store memories of sight. Echoic memory is where we store memories of sounds. And haptic memory is where we store memories of touch. Tapping into the sublime requires us not only to see differently, but to feel differently. And in order to feel differently, we must look for new paths and change our environment. You see, sublime experiences transport us in time and space. And we yearn for this with our greener grass complex, assuming the answer is elsewhere. Do you remember when Marshall McLuhan describes a kind of primordial existence that is outside of time and space? He said, until writing was invented, man lived in an acoustic space, boundless, directionless, horizonless, in the dark of the mind, in the world of emotion, by primordial intuition, by terror. Ferdinand de Saussure told us, without language, thought is a vague, uncharted nebula. But Aristotle told us the poiesis of language arises out of the connection between mythos and mimesis. In other words, before there was language, there was imagination. Heidegger said anxiety makes manifest the nothing. Camus calls our impulse for grounding a longing for clarity. Albert Einstein taught us imagination is more important than knowledge, for knowledge is limited to all we know and understand, while imagination embraces the entire world and all there will ever be to know and understand. Then the creating principle, being without extension, could not be beautiful, but beauty cannot be made to depend on magnitude, since whether in a large object or a small, the one idea equally moves and forms the mind by its inherent power. Longinus reminds us sublimity refers to a certain type of elevated language that strikes its listener with the mighty and irresistible power of a thunderbolt. A sublime passage can be heard again and again with equal pleasure. They say creative minds are messy minds, and this is evidenced in Albert Einstein's fame. Thus in the soul, while memory prevails, the solid power of understanding fails. Where beams of warm imagination play, the memory's soft figures melt away. Jean-Jacques Rousseau says the world of reality has its limits. The world of imagination is boundless. Lewis Carroll says, imagination is the only weapon in the war against reality. Tapping into the sublime requires us not to only see differently, but to feel differently. And in order to feel differently, we must look for new paths and change our environment.